Hello everybody. Today I'm going to be going over 3 ways that I create smooth scrolling in NextJS websites. So I'm going to start off by talking about what is smooth scrolling and then go over a couple examples of smooth scrolling and then get right into the 3 ways that I create smooth scrolling on NextJS websites. Let's get right into it. So I'm here on NextJS's documentation here just to show if you want to initialize your app or you don't know, that's how. And then also to show an example of a non-smooth scrolling website. So a non-smooth scrolling website would be one where you're scrolling and it's a little jarring, it's a little bit jerky. You know, if you use a mouse, it's going to be a pretty unpleasant experience. If you have a trackpad like I have right here, it's smooth, but that's given that you have a trackpad. I don't know the percentage of people that use mice, but I personally do. And this is okay if you have a website that has this sort of scrolling. It's not make or break, but the amount of effort that it takes to make something better is very minimal for the return that you get. So here is a recent site of the day on awards. So if you notice when I scroll with my mouse wheel here, it's very, very smooth. Everything comes into screen smoothly, everything scrolls by smoothly. You can create animations like membership benefits here without using any sort of extra JavaScript. You can just simply base animations off of scroll position, and everything will just be smooth from there on out. And I prefer to make websites this way because it's a very low amount of effort for a lot of return and a much higher level website. So I'm going to get into three ways that I create smooth scrolling in my websites. I'm going to start by highlighting 3 brands or libraries you can use. You could use Lenis for one, which is my personal preference, is using Lenis. You could use Locomotive Scroll, which is also a very good library. Locomotive Scroll V5, I believe, just came out, which is they use the native scroll wheel instead of overriding the scroll window, which is very nice. Or you could use GSAP Smooth Scroll, which just came out, so I don't recommend it because it feels maybe a little experimental because it's new. I would recommend going with number 1, which is Lenis. So now I'm going to get into creating the smooth scroller. So to get started here, I just have a basic Next.js website with these sections here. Section 1, 2, 3, 4. No smooth scroller on. It's just basic. This is what it looks like out of the box. And in here, I just have a basic layout and then a basic page just with the just completely gutted of the boilerplate code with 4 sections, and I have them styled in here with this styles right here if you want to copy that. So I'll start with method 1, which is using npm to install Lenis, and then using a component to mount it onto your application. So I'm here on Lenis's website here, and you just go check it out on GitHub, come to their repository here, and you want to npm I Lenis, and then when you import, just import Lenis from Lenis. Very simple. And then later on in the video, we're going to use the CDN link, but for now, we're just going to use the npm import. So the way that we can do this is instead of mounting it directly in the page, which that would turn the page into a client component, and we don't necessarily want that. We just want a section that's a client component to render the scroller for us. That way the entire page doesn't turn into one, and we can still have server components and server-side rendering in our page. So in here I have a component created just called section. It's super simple, just default function section, and exports a section. I'll go section 1 here. I'll have it at the very top of the page. And what we're going to do is up here, we're going to do use client, import use effect, use state from React, and we're also going to import Lenis. Oops. Lenis from Lenis. So here we're going to create the state for the smooth scroller, which is just going to be Lenis ref set Lenis equal to use state of null. And then we're also going to set the request animation frame state. And then set raf. Because that is how Lenis works. It uses a request animation frame to create the smooth scroller. So we're going to go use effect here. So on render, we want to run this code, which is going to instantiate the new smooth scroller. So we're going to const scroller equals new Lenis. Then we're going to do const rf. Or actually, sorry, let rf function raf of time. We're going to do scroller dot raf of time, and then request animation frame of raf, and then rf is going to be equal to request animation frame of raf here. We're going to set raf to rf, and we're going to set Lenis scroller. And we're going to use these states here because on return, when the component unmounts, we want to destroy the scroller and we want to cancel the animation frame. So we're going to go cancel animation frame of rf, or raf state rather, Lenis ref dot destroy, which is going to be a built-in function to destroy the scroller on unmount. So in here, we're going to render the section from components / section. One thing I forgot to mention is that in the return, we're going to have an if statement. If Lenis ref exists here, then we are going to do these two things. So that way it will work. So now we're going to refresh here. And now when I scroll, nice and smooth, beautiful, beautiful. Okay, that was method 1. Now we're going to go over method 2, which method 2 is my preferred way of doing this. So instead of using a component, because this component might not be in every page here, or maybe you don't want to store it in a component every time, or you don't have a client component to store it in. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to get back here. So we have our server-side rendered page here. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a scroll context provider. So here I have scroll context here, which is just going to be a use client component, scroll context with children as the props. So in here, we're actually going to do the exact same thing as the section, except with a couple extra steps. So I'm just going to copy all of this here because it's going to be the exact same. And we're going to use effect, use state, except the only difference here is we are going to also use create context and use context. And then also, of course, we're going to import Lenis from Lenis. So first step here is we're going to create the context. So we're going to go const smooth scroller context is equal to create context. Then we are going to export a function here, which is going to be our hook, our custom context hook, which is use smooth scroller is going to be equal to a function of use context smooth scroller context, just like that. So now all we have to do down here is in the return here, which is just a fragment, we're going to create here smooth scroller context dot provider, and that's going to be a component here. We're going to return children, and then the only thing we're going to do here is we're going to do value is equal to Lenis ref, and that's it. That's all we need. So now in here, instead of wrapping all of our sections and all of our content in the fragment or maybe a page container div, we're going to wrap it in the scroll context. So this is the function here that we declared in the context provider. So here we're just going to wrap everything in scroll context, delete these, go back to our page, reload, and we still have smooth scrolling. And now what's great about this is that all the children, so this is a foundational Next.js property in Next.js, I believe 13 or 14, whichever this came out, whichever client and server components came out. But the children of a client component, because this is a client component, this is only rendered on the client because Lenis cannot mount unless a body or something, or an HTML or something exists. It has to have markup. But with server-side components with Next.js, there isn't any markup already. There's just the information of your website all stored there, and then it comes from the server to the client. So this is all client-side. So you'd think that all of the children are also going to be declared client components because it's dependent on the smooth scroller. But that's not the case. Luckily, all the children of a client component can be server components. So all of these children here, these are all client components. So if you don't have the need to make all of these client components, you can keep them server components and maintain your website speed while also getting your client-side smooth scrolling, which is amazing. So now you might be wondering, if you're using this context provider here, how do you use the context? How do you use the scroller within components? So this is how, and it makes it even easier using the context provider. So if we go into section here, we're going to delete all this because we don't need any of this. We are going to need use client though, because to use context, or to use the scroller context, you need a client component. So that is important. But the entire website does not have to be a client component, which is amazing. So to use the smooth scroller context inside of a component, it is super simple. You just do scroller ref, which you can name anything you want. Use smooth scroller, and that's it. So then we're going to have a use effect here with our callback function. And in the parameters here, we're not going to do an empty array this time. We're going to do scroller ref, because we initially on page load, this is not going to exist. This is only going to exist once Lenis comes in here and mounts. So when this value changes, we want this use effect to run again. So what we can do here is, so if you want to access, for instance, the scroll event, we can do scroller ref dot on scroll, and then we can log e. So let's refresh here, and there we go. On scroll, we're getting the Lenis object here, and we can see direction, we can see all kinds of things, all kinds of very, very good, valuable information, velocity, everything. So that is method 2. Method 3, which is also an option, is to use either method 1 or 2, but to use the CDN link instead of importing Lenis. So this here is what we would use. And if you are using Next.js, then you will be putting this in the layout component. So what we want to do here is we want to open the body up, and we want to put script here. But this isn't going to be just a normal script. This is going to be a Next.js script, because we want this, and we want to also have the strategy set to after interactive. So now in our scroll context, we're not going to have Lenis. I apologize. We're going to go before interactive, not after interactive. If you go after interactive, you're going to get an error in scroll context because this is not going to exist yet. So you have to go before interactive and use Next.js built-in script here. So when you do that, we're still using our scroll context provider. Still works. All right, that's it for this video. We went over 3 ways that I create smooth scrollers on my website. Comment down below any suggestions for future videos or problems that you've had with current smooth scrollers that you'd like solved, or that you've just experienced that you'd like to help someone else with. That's all for today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.